this weekend and we not call for peace and justice in the Middle East. It's our dream, and our dream has the power to overcome the bear of a nightmare. Y'all, it's still our dream. So dream, but after your dream, stay woke and fight for justice, fight for freedom. And we insist on the release of the hostages, aid for children, a ceasefire, will engage in nonviolent prophetic protest against the war. And we are calling upon the world court to join with us because it is still our dream, and we stay woke. God bless you.
Let's hear it. Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes, everybody, let's hear it. And we welcome to the stage, really not welcome, it's home for him, one of the founding members of our board. Indeed, he and Aline Walker were the two youngest founding board members of the Operation Push board more than 50 years ago. And his activism has continued. Actually began with Reverend Jackson at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church when Reverend Jackson was the youth pastor, and it has continued for 60 years. I want you to put your hands together for the Dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, founding member of Operation Push, Operation Breadbasket, and Rainbow Push, Dwight McKee. Let's hear it, everybody.
Good morning. Over a half century ago, when we came to this building, Reverend Jackson and our organization was in the middle of a transition. We were transitioning from Operation Breadbasket, which had been the economic development arm of SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, founded by Dr. King and an idea planted by Leon Sullivan, to become an Operation Push. Transition, new ideas, new energy. And so one of the first things that Reverend Jackson did is he commissioned a new song. So we went from singing a song, say, we are the choir of SCLC, and our leader is Ralph Abernathy, to singing a song that he commissioned James Cleveland to write, young major star. And so he wrote us a song, say, the push is on. There's work for us to do. The push is on. The job is up to you. We could make it a better place if we live here right now. Can we count on you? The song changed as the mandate changed. We became Operation Breadbasket for Operation Push. Our focus expanded. People united to serve humanity. And we grew. And our responsibilities grew because we went from direct action to education to politics. As we expanded politically, 15 years later, we morphed into the Rainbow Coalition. And the Rainbow Coalition was to take the concept that Dr. King had laid out of a beloved community, of people of goodwill, people of like-mindedness, people of like values, coming together to really make a point of coordination where we could affect the policies of the world. We could take the country and challenge them to those goals Dr. King had of an economy that made room for everybody. An economy where everybody could have a job, everybody could have a house, everybody could, the most resourced, having more resources that. Now what we have is an opportunity to reclaim that. And that those of us who come out of that tradition can now regroup, come together, and fulfill that vision of a beloved community. Now, you can't be a beloved community if you don't love each other. And you can't love each other if you don't know each other. And so I don't want you all to see yourselves as visitors. I want us to see ourselves as part of that beloved community, which means when this is over, we need to introduce ourselves to one another, that we need to see ourselves as brothers and sisters and not as friends, that we need to not see ourselves as this group over here, this organization over there. We need to see ourselves as one community, which means that we have to reach out for each other and introduce ourselves to each other and begin to reclaim that notion that Dr. King said, that people of one mind, one spirit, one heart could come together and unite to save and serve the world. And so the push is on. And there is work for us to do. The push is on. The job is up to you. We can make it a better place if we start right now. Can we count on you?
Dwight McKee, let's hear it. Indeed, that song was written by the great Reverend James Cleveland. That was his gift to us. Let us cheer Reverend Cleveland on in heaven. Amen, everybody. We're bringing forward now one of the fathers of this peace summit. Indeed, he and Reverend Jackson have been partnered for 50 years, working together for justice and peace all across the world, focusing on the Middle East, but expanding that reach to reach across all of humanity. One of the directors of our 84 and 88 campaigns, and really a member of the Jackson and Rainbow family. Let us hear it for the founder of the Arab American Institute, Dr. James Zogby. Everybody, put your hands together.
Thank you all, everybody. It is it's an honor to be here and to have partnered with Operation Push and so many other national religious, peace, civil rights, ethnic, religious organizations. It has been profoundly moving to see the participation of so many wonderful people in making this happen. I see a couple congressmen here with us now, Congressman Jackson and García. Thank you so much. And of course, Reverend Jesse Jackson. You know, everyone has spoken about Reverend Jackson, and on some level you would think this is about Reverend Jackson. In a way it's not, but in a way it really is, because he set a tone for this discussion with the work he has been doing for the last half decade on this issue. It is not about hatred. It is not about anger. It is about creating peace. And the precondition to peace is that we stop killing each other, and so our demand is ceasefire. People have lots of other demands, you know, celebrating this and demanding this and demanding this, but it's stop the killing. That comes first, and that's what this summit is about. And secondly, it's about picking up the pieces of what's left. You know, you got 90% of Gaza, people in Gaza have now been removed, taken out of their homes, leveled, rubble. Think about what that means. Think about that means it's not just people died. It's people who grew up in a neighborhood, it no longer exists. It may have been desperately poor before. It's not there anymore. 14-year-old kid who knew the way to school, who knew the way to the store, knew the way to his aunt's house. It's not there anymore. It's your entire memory of your life is gone and can't come back. Even if it's rebuilt, something is lost. And those who did this have to know what they've done to these lives. And those who enabled it in our own government have to know the responsibility they have to bring it back. And so we demand, we call for, we urge, we pray for reconstruction aid, humanitarian aid, keeping people alive until we can get them back to where they belong. And then finally, we ask for conditioning or cutting U.S. aid to Israel because, frankly, we've passed legislation going back to the 60s, the Foreign Arms Export Control Act and the Foreign Assistance Act. We've passed these things before where we said quite clearly that the wealth of the American people should not be used to destroy, should not be used to violate people's rights. Now, our own government violates that principle. That doesn't make it right, doesn't make it better. I don't want my tax dollars used to drop 2,000 bombs on a residential neighborhood and kill kids. That's not what we pay taxes for. While we can't get WIC, while we can't get in aid to families in need here, while we can't keep Social Security funded, while we can't keep Medicare or expand it to, we can't do the things we need to do at home, and yet we're spending money to do this. And when they say military sales to Israel, they don't buy anything. We give them the money, and then we give them the weapons, and they, I mean, we got to talk about this, and that's what we're here for the last 2 days to do, to talk about it, to create a different dynamic. And look, we've got members of Congress now, numbers are growing, saying ceasefire now. We've got city councils across the country saying ceasefire now. We got state legislatures across the country saying ceasefire now. We got churches, we got synagogues. I mean, I so marveled this week about the participation of Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now and others. Think about that. All these mass demonstrations you've seen in cities with train stations shut down, with city halls shut down, with Congress actually invaded by people peacefully saying, ceasefire now. Do your job and call for a ceasefire now. And it's Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now. And our Jewish progressive colleagues, those in the African American community and those in the Latino community and those in the Asian community and those in the Muslim community and those across the board who've populated this movement have made a difference and are continuing to make a difference. That's why we're here. That's what we're bringing together. And it's not for a one-off meeting feeling good. It's about making a difference and bringing peace. And I started off mentioning Reverend Jesse Jackson and the tone he set. And it was a tone that we try to echo. At the same time, just think back 50 years, Reverend Jackson, when we started this on this path. You were ostracized by many. You were shut down by many. People said, we don't want to hear this. And even in '88, when we had the opportunity, because we had the votes, to have a debate at the Democratic National Committee, first time a convention had a debate on Palestinian rights, I was so honored to be the person at the podium doing it. It had been for me a lifelong dream to see our issue, the issue I cared about for so long, being center stage at a convention with people on the floor waving banners, peace for Israel and Palestinians, two-state solution, Palestine lives, things that I'd never thought I'd see in a convention for. We paid a price for that. We paid a price for it. And here we are in an America today where a poll that we released, Dr. Haynes and I, the first day shows the majority of the people now want what we called for 50 years ago. The majority of the people say ceasefire. They say we won't vote for a candidate who doesn't support a ceasefire. They say we want aid to be conditioned on behavior. They say we support Palestinians. That's what we called for, and that's where the American people are today. And so I thank you, and I'm calling forth Maya Berry, who's executive director of the Arab American Institute, who was instrumental in mobilizing this effort, and she's going to continue on the track. Oh, I was not supposed to do that, but here you are. Come on, Maya. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. As Jim said, this started with Reverend Jackson. It started with Reverend Jackson decades ago when he reminded us that speaking truth to power is sometimes challenging but always right. And it started with Reverend Jackson when he reached out to Jim and said, what I'm seeing is not okay. We've got to do something. And that's what brought us here today. That's what brought us here yesterday. And that's what we're going to continue to do tomorrow. So I just want to share with you super quick. Jim talked a bit about it. We came together to do 3 things, and we've got to keep saying it over and over again. Friends, I'm going to remind you, when congressional voices rooted in justice, like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib said, we need to demand a permanent ceasefire immediately. Regrettably, our Democratic White House referred to it as repugnant. I'm ashamed to say that here in front of you, but I have to remind us again and again, 3 things are what brought us here today. The first is an immediate, a permanent ceasefire, a release of the Israeli hostages, and a release of the Palestinian prisoners held without due process. Item 1. We have to keep saying it over and over again. Item 2, we need immediate humanitarian aid, reconstruction in Gaza, and the return of the Palestinians from their displaced homes and neighborhoods. It is not easy to acknowledge they don't exist anymore as they know it, as Jim just pointed out to us. But we must begin the process immediately of rebuilding the human lives that we can. Because regrettably, as you all know, we've lost too many that we can't. And item 3 is where we come in as Americans. Item 3 of the ask is that we follow US law. It is really easy, folks. It's a low bar. Every single country that receives US military assistance is required to follow existing US law. All we are saying is that the military assistance that is set to Israel, $3.8 billion annually, more post-October 7th, that's been allocated by Congress. I'm sorry, misspoke. That's been allocated by Biden and didn't go through Congress. We must follow US law. We must. Finally, I need to acknowledge before we came together as a group, and that group includes, of course, Rainbow Push, which brought us together. The call is what got us here, and it includes the Arab American Institute, and it includes Churches for Middle East Peace. It includes the Fellowship of Reconciliation, Faith for Black Lives, Jewish Voice for Peace Action, the U.S. Palestinian Council, the Muslim Civic Coalition, If Not Now, the National Council of Churches, Progressive Democrats of America, Red Letter Christians, and Sojourners. I say all those names to you, and I ask you to check out. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and give them a big round of applause. There's a website called www.summit4gaza.com. And the www indicates how old I am. Summit4gaza.com. Please check it out, because the next steps, we were inspired together. We were moved to action together. But the next steps for what we do are going to be found at that site. And I ask you all to please, as the headlines move away, I'm still waiting for one breaking news network to talk about the genocide. Breaking news right now is everything other than the genocide, which is why we have to remain focused.
It's wonderful to see the rainbow in action. All right. And now we have yet another sister. somebody. Let's hear it, everybody, for someone you know and love, State Senator Nina Turner. Come on, let's hear it.
I don't know where to start. I mean, all of my colleagues who have gone before me, I had some little notes. I was touched by the Lord this morning. And I started marking stuff off my paper because my august colleagues have already went there. When you dial 911, well, let me back up. I want to thank Reverend Jesse Jackson, Mrs. Jackson, the Jackson family, Rainbow Push, Dr. Jim Zogby, the Institute, Maya and the team, and all of the people that Maya laid out, because it is important to know who is on the right side on this issue in terms of the organizations that are participating in this emergency summit. I do want to start, y'all got to forgive me because I usually just speak extemporaneously. I'm going to try to start on my notes. And to SJ and to Reverend Brown for being wonderful moderators of this whole thing. You know, I was poring over some of Reverend Jackson's quotes this morning. One stuck with me. He once said, "A man must be willing to die for justice. Death is an inescapable reality, and men die daily, but good deeds live forever." Can we just rest in that just for a minute? And we can put woman in there. It's really about humankind, people who have a consciousness level to know that you got to give up something. And we live in a where people don't want to make sacrifice. In the black church, we always talk about how folks want to go to heaven, but don't nobody want to die. If I could just get there without dying, I'm good. And everything doesn't necessarily have to be a physical death. There are people who are still alive who went through the struggle of getting us to where we are today, but they lost some stuff. Those of you who were with us yesterday, you heard Professor Mark Lamont Hill talk about some of the things that he lost standing up for justice. There are other people who have lost things, so you don't have to physically die to lose things. But what Reverend Jackson said is that good deeds last forever. So I was thinking about, you know, this is an emergency summit for Gaza. I'm like, emergency, emergency, emergency. What does that mean? So I thought about calling 911. 911, what's your emergency? Or let me back that thing up. 911, what do you need? Police, fire, or EMS? What's your emergency? Now, when you dial 911, the operator wants to know if you need the police. If you need the po-po, the ones who act right, okay, I'm gonna put that in the parking lot. But if you call in for the police, a crime has happened, you need some help, right? If you dial 911, just in general, you need some help. If you need EMS, that means there's a medical emergency happening. If you need fire, something is burning down. 911, what's your emergency? We need the fire department. But there are some emergencies where just mere mortals can't work this thing out. It's sometimes when you have an emergency, you call mama, you call daddy, you call grandmama, you call auntie, but there are some emergencies that are divine. 911, what's your emergency? God, we need you because we have moral ineptitude in this world. 911, what's your emergency? God, we need you because there's moral decay in this world. Now, we know that God works through people, though. See, that's the catch. And we have got to be the people that God works through, vessels that God works through. So 911, what's the emergency? So I went to Scripture. In the Christian tradition, I know there are many faiths here, there are many people who may not have any faith at all, and that is all right. Scripture in the Christian Bible, blessed are the peacemakers, because they will be called the sons and daughters of God. I'm talking to the peacemakers in this room. Because I don't want you to get weary in well-doing. Sometimes it is hard to know whether or not you are on the right path because you're catching so much hell for trying to do so much good. And when I use the term peacemaker, I'm not talking about being a pacifist. See, being somebody that stands up for love and justice and peace is not about standing idly by and letting things just happen. No, peacemakers stand up for what is just, for what is right, and for what is good. 911, what is your emergency? It is moral decay. So I want to say to my sisters and brothers and family and friends that what happens over there in the Gaza happens over here in the United States of America. The type of moral decay that I am talking about happens here first. Anytime you got 500,000 people who are unhoused in the United States of America, go over to Gaza where you got millions of people who have been displaced. 911, what is your emergency? Moral decay. What happens over there happens over here. Dr. Zogby laid out. See, because for the folks who are still alive, and don't let them numbers fool you. We got about 30,000 people who are dead. That's an undercount. We got thousands of people who are still alive, but they are displaced. They are shaken up. They don't know what the future holds. That is an undercount. We got over 60% of the Gaza just destroyed. What happens over there happens over here. When we were coming in this morning, I saw a line of people in an alley waiting on food in the cold. What happens over there happens over here. If you want to understand why the leadership of the United States of America has not taken a principled and moral stance, sisters and brothers and family and friends, they can't, because they haven't taken a principled or moral stand right here in the United States of America. They can't do it. They're incapable of doing it. There is no way on God's green earth that you can allow millions of people in this country to be underinsured or uninsured. There is no way on God's green earth that you can let babies go to bed at night in the richest country on the face of the earth and not want them to be fed and think that we gonna give a damn as a nation about what happens over in Gaza. What happens over there happens over here. 911, what's your emergency? And then Republicans and Democrats got the pure unadulterated gall. They can't do nothing else in a bipartisan way, but baby, war they can do in a bipartisan way. Hello, somebody. What happens over there happens over here. 911, what is your emergency? Alan Minsky and I were in LA. I'm gonna wrap this thing up. I thought I had a little more time. Y'all know when I get started, I can run around this room. I wore my tennis shoes today. Yesterday I had on my stilettos, SJ. But today, I'm ready. Alan Minsky and I were in LA. We walked past a homeless person. A lot of people were walking past this person laying on the ground. And Alan, I don't know if you remember, but you said this. We are the only species that will walk past our own. Animals who don't communicate in the same way that we do take care of their own so much better than we do. My message to you today is we do have an emergency. But my message to you today is not just that what happens over there happens over here, but that we have the power. If each and every one of us are willing to put a little extra on our ordinary, extraordinary things will happen, baby. We have seen it happen throughout history, that we are the ones who can make the change. We can make this thing be better than what it is right now today. I do not want you to get weary and well-doing. 911, what is your emergency? Moral decay. But hello, somebody. Somebody gonna pick up the phone on the other end and say, what is your emergency? I'm ready to help you out right now. We are those people. So in my close, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you're going to have a whole bunch of fools quoting him and dropping bombs. I just want to put that out there. But Dr. King talked about power and love, and so I just want you to rest with this. Power without love is reckless and abusive. Power without love is reckless and abusive. You can't love somebody. You can't have power and not love people. And love without power is sentimental and anemic. In other words, you can't just love and have no power. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is correcting everything that stands against love. Sisters and brothers, family and friends, today I want you to know love lifted me. When nothing else could help, love lifted me. It is for the love of this nation and the love of this world that people like you and I are assembled in this space today at this emergency summit. It is because of love that we will continue to connect arm in arm and spirit with people just like us all over the world, to not only demand a permanent ceasefire in the Gaza, but to stand up for what's happening in the Sudan and in the Congo and in Yemen and all over the world. When nothing else would help, love lifted me.
Let's hear it for Nina Turner. My. We all need that kind of energy, that kind of zeal about this. This is an emergency, everybody. Come on, let's hear it for Nina Turner. And this Peace Summit, we welcome another member of our family, someone who took to the road and started registering red, yellow, black, brown, and white without being asked. He's one of the founding members of the Rainbow. Indeed, he is now one of our congressmen. I have to claim him as my own. Congressman Chuy García. Come on, everybody.
Good morning, muy buenos días, salam alaikum, shalom, peace be unto each and every one of you present here or listening across the country. I recorded my message last night because the weather people told us that we would be under 5 feet of snow and 100-mile-an-hour winds. And behold, we have a beautiful sunny day out there. And I said, I want to see Reverend Jackson. I want to see Jim Zogby. And of course, all those of you who didn't listen to the weather people this morning. And I'm here because I too, as a grandfather of 7 grandchildren, am sickened by the news reports of especially so many children and moms dying because of the brutal bombing of Gaza. And I'm truly moved by that. Because even as the horror of Hamas attack sunk in, and as we mourn those killed and kidnapped, I feared for what would come next. I feared the Netanyahu government, the most extreme right-wing government, and what they were capable of doing. I feared that the Israeli Defense Forces' military response would only push peace further away, and that it would only endanger the lives of more Israelis and Palestinians as it has. I called for ceasefire, de-escalation, and the release of hostages right as the military began its bombardment and in the months since. More than 23,000, probably 24,000 by now, Gazans have died. including more than 10,000 children, 7,000 additional children who are missing and feared dead under the rubble across Gaza. A report that came out this week suggests that 1 out of every 100 Gazans have been killed. 1.9 million people, over 85% of the total population, have been displaced. Think about the magnitude. And Gaza is starving. 90% of the population already is facing acute food insecurity, and by February, many Gazans will face famine. That is the urgency of why we are here today. The horror of the situation is both unfathomable and deeply personal. Though we're now speaking of death by the tens of thousands, of suffering by the millions, we cannot lose sight of the inhumanity that each civilian death is. These are children who look like my grandchildren, moms, our parents, people just like us, and they're being killed indiscriminately. We're here today because we cannot look away from the brutal reality of Israel's assault. We're here today to call for a ceasefire now, a permanent ceasefire, and for the flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza. And thanks to the historic mobilization of a multiracial and multi-faith coalition across the world. People are making calls, organizing protests, and leading demonstrations. More members of Congress are confronting the reality of this moment. The group of members calling for ceasefire is growing every week thanks to the work of so many people out there. But even as the ceasefire coalition grows, even as organizers around the world demonstrate for peace and accountability, the U.S. is still materially supporting Israel's war. The Biden administration has rightly voiced concerns about Israel's approach. But over Christmas, they also bypassed Congress and transferred over 147 million of weapons to Israeli army. The world is watching, and we fund the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza. So I believe we're at a crossroads. The temporary truce in November demonstrated that a negotiated ceasefire is the only way to release hostages and political prisoners, the only way to save civilian lives. More bombs will not make people safer. More violence will not bring peace. I've been organizing in Chicago for a long time now, long enough to learn that the fight for our rights and dignity requires us to band together across lines and differences. And the Rainbow Push Coalition, which organized this event, is the embodiment of that belief that we must reject those who sow racial, ethnic, and religious divisions. Even on the inside, it can feel like our government is unresponsive, but it's exactly in moments like these that we must seek out solidarity and demand change. We must focus on freeing hostages, getting aid into Gaza at the massive scale that is needed, and preventing even more devastating regional conflict. We will continue to stand together in our urgent call for ceasefire and the fight for our shared humanity. Thank you, sisters and brothers.
Let's hear it for our Congressman Chuy García, everybody. Another member of our Illinois delegation. We are so excited to have the former national spokesman for Rainbow Push, all these Rainbow Push people, Chuy, García, and now, I think this is someone we all know. Congressman Jonathan Jackson, does that ring a bell? Congressman Jonathan Jackson, everybody, the birthday boy.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be back in the home of Rainbow Push, the headquarters of the freedom and justice movement. I'd like to thank all of the distinguished guests that are here today and like to be affiliated with all of their remarks. Thank you for taking the time on this cold, bitter winter day. You have the stomach on fire to get up, brave the cold, the sleet, the snow. So for those that are watching from around the nation and around the world, Chicago is on fire for justice, to put in a ceasefire, to stop the killing of innocent children. We are sickened to our stomachs. At Rainbow Push, we need you as volunteers. This is the first stage. Then there's a second wave. We have to continue to push forward. I want to thank my colleague, the Honorable Chuy García. Chuy García has stood up and out and has been courageous and has been on the front line. Brother García and I've known him my entire adult life. He and I were a part of the first, it was either 13 or 18 people that originally signed ceasefire. We didn't have to double check. We didn't have to look for a poll. We didn't have to ask a donor. We did what was right the first time. I thank Chuy for having that sort of moral fortitude. It takes guts to be in this business. We are also acknowledging Congressman Bobby Rush, who led a tremendous career in the Congress. Thank you, Congressman Rush. One of the beautiful things before I take my seat about coming from Chicago, our world is hot in the summertime, and our world is cold in the wintertime. No sense in talking about the weather, because you can have 4 seasons in one day. We're going to get up, we're going to stay on the battlefield, and the thing about Chuy, the reason I call him my brother, he brings the fight. If I have a question about what I should be voting on, I just look up at the board where our names are in the Capitol, and I know if Chuy got there before me, I'll follow him, or if I get there before him, he's going to follow me. I'll do it every time, Chuy. Ladies and gentlemen, there is an evil wind moving across the country. My father, Reverend Jackson, wants you to know that Reverend Martin Luther King's birthday should be a day that we only celebrate for his birth. We thank God for that. We commemorate for his life and living, for the work that he did. And we come back to rededicate ourselves every year. We have to work, not for a day of service, but for a lifetime of service. The political, those that are in Washington, change very surreptitiously, and they change what was Martin Luther King's birthday, and they said it's a day of service. They said you should clean out your closets, give away clothes. You should stand in shelters and give away food. You ought to clean out bathrooms and do something good in your neighborhood. That's their definition of Reverend Martin Luther King. We're here today to celebrate the 95th birthday of one of America's greatest assets, one of God's gifts to this great country that was assassinated at the age of 39. Reverend Martin Luther King has been dead longer than he ever lived. That one bullet killed the dreamer, but it did not kill the dream. We come here every year to reaffirm our conviction towards a more humane society. We're not going to let MAGA extremism get us dysfunctional and be afraid. We have now all survived death threats. I had no idea a year ago from today, when I became a sworn congressman in the 118th Congress, that you could say something very controversial. Ms. Turner, you talk about a 911. People call because they need assistance. People call when there's domestic violence. People call for a sundry of issues. Can you believe you get death threats when you say ceasefire? Can you believe some of our colleagues are afraid to say ceasefire? Because they're afraid for their lives. Can you believe there are members in the Congress and members in the United States Senate today that will not talk about the 45th president of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump? They won't call his name out as an insurrectionist, as a person that's an extremist, as a person that is violent, as a person that is trying to topple our democracy, because they're afraid. They're afraid to call out the name of Donald J. Trump as one of the most low-life persons to have ever been in the United States of America. They will threaten our lives, threaten our fundings, but when you come from Chicago, bring it on. We're ready for the fight. We're not going backwards. It's already been said, I'm going to say it again. We need humanitarian aid to flow to the children and the family members in the West Bank and in Gaza today. We want to stop the de-escalation. We do not believe people are born natural enemies. We don't believe that Palestinian children and Jewish children and Christian children cannot play together. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and this past September, I went to Israel. My dear friend, Brother Jim Zogby, asked me to lead a petition that was signed, a letter for the 117th Congress, and it was asking for reciprocal visa waiver program. What does that mean? Condoleezza Rice agreed with this. That means if you have a blue passport, you're an American citizen, you have the right to be recognized wherever we have a reciprocal visa waiver program. Well, what's the problem? Our Palestinian brothers and sisters, born in America, that have a blue passport, that we have a visa reciprocal waiver program with the state of Israel, cannot go back to West Bank and go back to Gaza under the terms and conditions of the reciprocal visa waiver program. I went to Israel and I specifically asked Prime Minister Netanyahu, where is the status and what is the status of the reciprocal visa waiver program? He deflected. One person on the left talking, one person on the right talking. They gave a bunch of statistics. I said, I used to teach math, I understand. I want whole numbers. Do you acknowledge the visa reciprocal waiver program? He never answered it. Now, before I take my seat, you know the story of Cain and Abel. You know the story of Adam and Eve. The first sin in the Bible, I would tell you, when God asked Adam, why did you eat of the apple? He says, the lady made me do it. The point I want you to get out of that is deflection. That is blame shifting. That is the first sin when we start blame shifting. I saw Mr. Netanyahu blame shift and try to obfuscate and put it on someone else. When you're the leader, you have to take responsibility sometimes. Over 1% of those in Gaza have now been killed. Over 5% have now been crippled and maimed. The numbers is going up. Now 80% has been permanently displaced. We stand here at the Rainbow Push at the headquarters of Freedom, thanking you for volunteering. Thank you for coming out. We will not back down. God bless you. Santita.
Congressman Jonathan Jackson, everybody. And wish him a happy birthday. I want to bring before you a young man. I've been working in tandem with him today, someone with whom you should be familiar. He's a great pastor from the great city of Maywood, Illinois, but he's the head of our 1,000 Churches initiative. And as I shared with you, that is mosques, that is synagogues, those are citadels of faith. We are tying them together all around the country. Amen? Should we not be doing that? All right, now wait a minute, I can't hear you. What? But he's got a special treat. Pastor Brown? Let's hear it from Pastor Chauncey Brown, everyone.
Thank you so much to our congressmen that stood with us. We are so glad that you were able to endure such great speaking by Congressman Jonathan Jackson and Congressman Chuy García. Give it back. Please give it back and give it up for them. Give it up for them. Remember, this fight is going to take everyone. This fight is going to take you. The freedom that we fight for is not free. It must be financed. We need each and every one of you. I understand. What I realized, there was a little boy, and he was getting ready to build a house. He didn't know where to start, and so he just began to grab tools. As he began to grab tools, the foreman came on the job, and he said, "I need you to build a house." The little boy said, "I can't build a house, but I can put the doorknobs on." A little girl came alongside and she said, "I can't build a window. I can't put the windows in, but I can wash the windows." A neighbor came down and said, "I can't do the doors. I can't do the windows, but I know how to scrub carpet." And y'all, what I realize is maybe some of you are just like those neighbors, that they don't know how to build the entire house, but everybody knows how to do their part to make sure that the house is built. And when a house is under siege, we need each and every one of us to do our part to rebuild the house that is being destroyed. Our friends, our neighbors in Palestine, our friends, our neighbors across the world are being attacked, and their houses are being burnt down. Their houses are being destroyed. And our question for you today is, will you do your part in rebuilding the house? Will you do your part in rebuilding the house that is being attacked in Palestine? Will you do the part in doing and building the house that is being attacked right here in this United States of America? Can you do your part? And I believe everyone in this room, everyone all over the world can do your part in helping us fight for freedom around the world. And so I'm going to ask as many as possible that could join us with a $100 seed. $100 seed. Our ushers are here, and I want you to raise your hand, and I want you to take an envelope. I understand it. Everyone cannot do $100, but everyone can do something to finance this fight, because we need your support to ensure freedom around the world. We need your support. How many of you are enjoying this conference today? We are having this wonderful summit, and we have great technology. We have a beautiful auditorium. We have great leaders. We have the greatest voices from around the world are converging, right here in Chicago, and we're convening to ensure that there is a world solution that is right here out of this great city of Chicago. And the Rainbow Push Coalition and all of the organizations that have partnered together could not do it without you. So what I need today, I need everyone to join us in giving. I hear you. Some people don't have envelopes. You can give so by texting PUSH to 41444. You can go to rainbowpush.org and you can give by way of our giving link. You can give right now, but I need everyone to give something. I don't, if it's $5, give it. If it's $10, give it. If it's $1,000, give it. This is a fight that we must all take part in, and we must do our portion in building the house. So can I have some commitment today? Can I say we're not just here, but we're committing to this fight, that we're going to sow into this fight, and we're going to overcome, but we are only going to overcome if we come together. So please, everyone, take an envelope. Be prepared to give. Pull out your phones. Don't text your friends unless you're texting them to give. Give today, for this is the day that the Lord has made. This is a fight that the Lord shall want us to prevail in, and we need you to partner with us that we can change the world right here from this wonderful city of Chicago. As part of the 1,000, as you're gathering your support in this movement, make sure we don't miss anybody. We want to be very clear that it was our president, the Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III, who said just yesterday that maybe the church has become less prophetic because they're looking to make more in their nonprofit.
And so it is important, as 1,000 churches connected is coming together and rebuilding and reemerging, that the churches have the prophetic voice of God in the relevant issues that we are facing. And today we are blessed to have one of the greatest voices in this nation, one of the most prophetic liberation movement preachers of this generation, and none other than the Reverend Dr. Jamal H. Bryant Jr. of the New Birth Missionary Baptist Church of Atlanta, Georgia. Give it up for Dr. Bryant as he comes.
Peace to my friends, our family, and comrades who in the struggle are striving towards the goal that America has never reached, which is liberty and justice for all. On this weekend, millions of people around the world will be celebrating the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want to remind you that when Dr. King was killed, it was the lowest moment of his popularity. People were in outrage because they thought he was not staying in his lane. It's all right to talk about boycotting buses in Montgomery, crossing bridges in Selma, but he should not speak to what was taking place in Vietnam. As a consequence, John Maxwell rings clear to me in this moment that if you want to be liked, sell ice cream. I'm so thankful that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. raised a model for us, not for Bluebell, not for Breyers, not for Haagen-Dazs, that he was not in the ice cream business, but in the social justice work. It is that which brings us to this moment, where we realize that so much of America is turning a blind eye to what it is that Stevie Wonder can see is an encroaching genocide, that millions of people are being impacted in the Middle East, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land of Israel, where unholy things are taking place. We stand this weekend in moral outrage and in righteous indignation to declare and to defy against a system and a structure that is, in fact, acting as if we are in Disney World and it's all make-believe, that this is real deaths of babies, real deaths of journalists, real deaths of citizens, real deaths of our brothers, and yet we say nothing. My moral DNA has come back, and it is evident that I must be 100% South African. I want to pause and publicly appreciate our brothers and sisters in South Africa who are coming to raise the banner high and to cry loud that Dr. King declared, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so while the court proceedings are taking place to where it is that we know that the guilt verdict should be hammered, I wanted to make sure that this nation and this generation is not found guilty of saying nothing or doing nothing. I'm grateful for our founder and our leader, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. I'm appreciative for his successor and our fearless leader in this moment, Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes. And I'm appreciative to our partners around the world who are standing in lockstep with the Palestinian community. Isn't it amazing that Dr. King's name is blasted on the sides of elementary and middle schools all over this country? Isn't it applaudable that Dr. King's name is on over 57 streets across this country? Isn't it great that there is a national holiday? But I come to you today because there is something that I think that we need to really push forward as we move and march towards Monday. When I was a kid, I remember Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson declaring and reminding all of us that Dr. King's birthday was not a day off, it was a day on. But I want to press and stretch that point and suggest to you, albeit humbly, that Monday should be a day, here it is, of digital protest. I want to challenge every single one of you that you would write your representatives, that you would in fact send an email so that when they return on Tuesday, they will be met with the eye-opening understanding through emails that the fight still continues, that it was not a day off for us, it was a day on. Ladies and gentlemen, while it is that Dr. King's name is on schools, there's a whole lot of people who need to be schooled. They need to be schooled to know that this infraction did not just start 60 days ago, but when it is that you suppress people for so many years, and when they finally rise, you cannot tell a hungry person how to have table manners. They're fighting for their life, fighting for their dignity, and fighting for some sense of the great democracy that America claims to boast. At 5'3", James Baldwin put it so eloquently, you cannot fix it until you face it. Now is the time that we've got to face the bitter and the harsh reality that this will not go away, that we've got to deal with it head on. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot allow Dr. King's dream to turn into a global nightmare. And so while it is that I ring loud about what is taking place in Palestine, I cannot be muted about what's taking place in the Congo. I cannot, in fact, turn away with what's happening in the Sudan or in Somalia. I cannot feign as if it is not real in Haiti. So let's lock arms, not just for one region, not just for one people, but that the world over will understand that there is a day that all of us will be able to breathe free and finally sing together, not symbolically, but substantively, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, because we marched, because we protested, because we lifted up our voices, because we posted, because we prayed, we are free at last. Fight on.
Pastor Jamal Bryant, everybody. As we talk about Palestinians, we are hearing from our brothers and sisters, beloved Rania Batrice, who is one of the organizers of this summit. No one give her a round of applause for this. Rania?
Thanks so much again, everybody, for being here and for tuning in. And I'm going to try to get us some time back. But very quickly and importantly, one of the things that our dear brother Dwight McKee mentioned yesterday was about the intersectionality of this movement and how important that is. And if you look around in this room, we can see it. We can see it. Something that is really important that we have to also mention is the support from the labor community. So I just want to very quickly mention UAW International, United Electrical, the local steelworkers and retirees, the postal workers. We've got some Teamsters on board. We've got some of the Chicago Teachers Union and 800 other unions and labor organizations who have called loud and proud for a ceasefire now. Yesterday, I had the honor of moderating a panel with some people I couldn't believe I got to be on stage with. It was Dwight McKee, it was Mirza, it was Dr. Cornel West, and they rooted us, they grounded us in this moment and reminded us that this is not new. We heard from my dear, dear sister Nina Turner the same thing. This is not new. We're seeing it play out across Palestine right now. Every single time, I know myself and Tarek and others in the room who have family there, when that WhatsApp message won't go through, we all hold our breath. It's been devastating. But the people that we're surrounded by here today have reminded us that it's not new. And when we do lock arms And when we do come together, and when we do not allow them to silence us, there is nothing we cannot do. And I just want to, one of the reminders that Dr. West gave us yesterday that I so appreciate, because I have to tell you, I felt really angry. I felt a lot of rage. I felt myself being on a side of emotions I don't necessarily like to be around. I'm a loving person, generally speaking. I've been a little salty lately. I think it's understandable. But Dr. West rooted us in love. And he reminded us also, his brilliant, prophetic, perfect quote, "Justice is what love looks like out loud." So when we talk about love, love is not weakness. Love means we come together and we fight like heck for justice. And that's what we're all here doing here today, and it's what we're going to continue doing tomorrow and the day after and the day after. Thank you so much.
Love you, Rania. Come on, everybody. Come on. Let us remember, many of our Palestinian brothers and sisters have relatives who are over there right now. Remember that. Grandmothers, grandfathers, cousins, uncles, aunts, mamas, daddies. This is very, very, very personal. Let us always remember that. We have another Palestinian American activist, American Muslims for Palestine, attorney Tarek Khalil. You were on my show not too long ago. Tarek, come on.
All right. I was told I had to get up here fast because I only got about 2 minutes, and there's really a lot that I want to say, but I just want to start off with this. It's such a pleasure to be among all of you. It's such an honor to speak to all the tribes that are present here today. We are in lockstep together. This is what I always say to our communities, especially our progressive communities. You cannot be progressive except for Palestine, but moreover, you cannot be progressive only on Palestine either. So that's a message to my Palestinian brothers and sisters as well. There's a word that Dr. King used a lot, justice, because he understood that you cannot have peace without justice. We all desire peace, but we demand justice. We don't just desire justice. That's a demand. That is our rightful demand as human beings, and especially as Palestinians who have suffered for nearly 100 years under a brutal colonial British regime, under a brutal Zionist settler colonial regime. And now, with our tax money, $3.8 billion a year and potentially $14.3 billion additional military assistance to bomb to smithereens beautiful Palestinian children in Gaza, to bomb the homes of Palestinian families, to ruin Palestinian society. This is with our tax money. We are complicit in a genocide. And how fitting is it? How fitting is it to have South Africa be the first nation to send out its application to the International Court of Justice and say that Israel is committing a genocide against the Palestinians, a nation that has suffered under a brutal apartheid regime, and Palestinians who continue to suffer under a brutal apartheid regime. And we must always end it with this, with our tax money. We need to understand that if you are silent, your tax dollars are still contributing to the death, to the slaughter, to the genocide of a defenseless civilian population. The Palestinians in Gaza, 80% of whom are refugees, kicked out of their homeland and denied the right to return to their homeland, denied repatriation, denied compensation, denied restitution, denied the satisfaction to realize their full dignity as human beings. This is injustice, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you so much.